Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jose.
And today we've seen Bros.
Yes.
We've taken all the energy in the world not to say Bros. I can't. It's just like, see the title, it looks like Bros to me. That's the way it is for an English audience, unfortunately. It's Bros. It's written by Billy Eichner.
Yes.
Written by Billy Eichner and Nick Stoller. And Nick Stoller directed it. And he's previously directed other Judd Apatow produced comedies, such as the Bad Neighbours films, which I really like. And get into the Greek and a couple of others which I wasn't such a big fan of or haven't seen. It's kind of been billed as Hollywood's first gay rom-com. We've seen a few kind of gay comedies in the last few years, but they've mostly been about kids growing up and coming out and that sort of thing. Whereas this is about a guy, played by Billy Eichner, who is in his 40s. He's very solidly, happily gay, but I say happily, he also kind of doesn't have long-term relationships, and he's maybe not sure about what his life is and that sort of thing. He has a kind of Sex and the City. Is it Carrie in Sex City who's the diarist, who's the main character?
Yeah.
He does a podcast about... that's kind of the equivalent right now.
No, I'm laughing just because, he's 40 and he's happily gay, and you think, well, nobody would ever say he's 40 and he's happily heterosexual. I mean,
that's not
he's
quite
happy in his life.
That's that kind of sort of.
I know,
but then, of course, he's not actually all that happy in his life because
he's single.
He's single and he doesn't know if that's really what he wants, and he's kind of getting on with it. But I get what you mean though. And as well as being a podcaster, he is helping to set up part of the board of this LGBTQ plus museum that's being set up in New York, where the film's set. And there are lots of jokes and stuff about the kind of the histories and the competing histories that they're going to tell. There's a lot of funny stuff around, the L's versus the B's versus the G's versus the T's, and they all kind of want their part in history and so on and so forth. And he meets at a gay nightclub this guy who is very fit, very kind of the opposite of Billy Eichner in all those ways. And they start it's a classic kind of will they, won't they, are they going to get on, how is it going to go relationship. I actually wasn't mad about I really wanted to like this. I like Billy Eichner.
I don't like him that much. I mean, I actually, I'm sure I've maybe been exposed to him, but I can't remember. But I thought he's not a movie star.
He's not an actor. I mean, I don't think it's possible to pretend that he's good at acting.
No.
And it really reminds me, a lot of this film really reminded me of a sitcom, which no one has seen on ITV from about 20 years ago, called Shane, which was Frank Skinner, and he wrote it and he started it. And it was an awful, awful sitcom. And what happened in it was kind of situations would happen in which Frank Skinner would just do like a ream of monologue, which was just essentially his stand-up. Like, it wasn't acting. Right? There's a lot like this in here.
There was a long shot in the film, which was all Billy Eichner telling jokes, right?
Yeah.
And some of them were funny. I mean, he's a funny guy, but he's not that funny. Like, he's not Woody Allen or anybody like that, right? Like, but he's funny enough, and he's smart. But actually, you think, this is taking up like 5 minutes, right? Like, 5 minutes without like a visual gag or, kind of a joke from the editing or, like there's a million ways you can make a film funny. And this was literally a tracking shot of him just, telling stuff about his life that was meant to be funny.
Yeah.
Right?
And a lot of the time, it's not even a tracking shot. A lot of the time, it's just a static shot. He's supposed to be having a conversation with someone, and his character will go into a kind of neurotic, angry, self-righteous kind of rant about, the way gay people are, or the way that society expects us to be, or whatever it might be. And it would take a very long time. And not only was it not funny enough, I thought it committed like your cardinal sin, what you consider to be a cardinal sin, which is that it was preachy. And it said, we know everything, we know the answers, and so on and so forth.
I felt that. I thought all of this stuff of like teaching people about gay history, right? And kind of, it's almost, how dare you not know? And it was so the opposite of being inclusive, and taking people's differences and maybe like kind of leading them into something. It felt like you were really being pummeled into a very particular view of, I think, of what being gay is, of what gay culture is, of what, gay history is, as if that's the only truth available to anybody, right? And actually, I thought that the film reproduced that with that whole Abraham Lincoln thing, right? Like, that obsession. Yeah.
So the conceit is that in the museum, Billy Eichner's character wants there to be an Abe Lincoln exhibit, which is about how Abe Lincoln was gay or bi.
Yes.
And there's always questions about, well, was there the evidence for it and so on, but he's quite insistent that he wants it.
Yes. So I thought that the film reproduced that in kind of patting itself on the back for having all the answers, for including all of these different ways of being, like, trans people and cisgender people and people, Asian peoples and, black peoples and, it was almost like you're ticking all these boxes. I thought they were all very poorly cast, actually. And I wondered, am I just being a self-hating queer, really? Like, because like a lot of those things kind of bothered me. I thought they were off. I thought they were badly cast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought maybe it's a New York thing. I don't know. But certainly kind of people that I know are not all gay in the same way. Right, which kind of this really seemed to.
Well, I'm not sure it does. I mean, part of the central thing about the relationship is that Billy Eichner is gay in this one way, and Aaron, Luke McFarlane plays him, is gay in a different way.
I know, but that's a binary. That's easy to do. So you have like the sporty jock, and then you have like the femi-nervy way. Yeah. But actually, all of the people around the Billy Eichner character are even more kind of, exaggerated and flamboyant and caricatured and so on than Billy Eichner. I mean, Billy Eichner is, the quietest version of all of that surrounds him. Yeah, and then you have, the binary opposite of the muscle jock and so on, right, that come together. So I thought all of those bits of casting were, to me, off.
In representational terms, it's not that sophisticated, but it's definitely kind of got its heart in the right place. And it is doing, even if it comes down to ultimately centralising Billy Eichner's character and his kind of form of being gay, if you like, it does try to show how different people are different, if you like. Even in just the thinnest terms, like the guy he meets at the gym, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think I don't even want to talk about it on representational terms because that's okay. That's not where my problem is. And actually, a lot of the verbal jokes landed on me.
Yeah.
Right, and there were situations, that I kind of recognized in a way, right? And I thought it was really good that, all of these different ways of having a relationship, or at least touched upon the the heteronormative one with children on the horizon is what ultimately gets chosen, which, is it's in itself a problem. But anyway, that's not what I have a problem with. The central thing I have a problem with is that it's a really bad comedy. It illustrates all of the problems that we've often talked about, with American comedy, which is that it's all verbal. Right, like, there's not a single visual joke in the whole film, right? So this is a romantic comedy. I thought all the romantic moments flopped, yeah, and all of the, the comedy moments were all one note. It was just on the verbal front. That's it, So when I hear that Billy Eichner is saying that, the film has been let down, that audiences have been responded, he's blaming homophobia, he's saying also gay people haven't responded, my answer is the film isn't good enough.
The film isn't good enough, that's for sure. I would disagree with you that it is all verbal. And actually the better examples of the comedy in the film are where it's not. For the
moment, so what's not verbal?
So, for example, when they meet the Josh character, who is the hockey player who's come out at the age of 40, that Aaron went to school with, and they go into an orgy with him, a threesome with him, but there's a fourth guy there who's just invited himself along, who we have no idea who he is, this little fella.
Yes.
It's a visual joke when the three of them are kissing and he just shows up. It is a visual joke. That's not verbal.
Well,
it is, and it's hilarious.
Yeah, I mean,
it's visual.
Well, I mean, no. Well, first of all, it's not just visual, it's situational.
Right.
Right? That you have, a really ugly guy in the middle of all of this intervening on it. That's a situation comedy joke.
Yeah, well, it's
right?
not verbal.
Rendered sexual.
You said everything was verbal. That's not the situation. Still isn't verbal, but it's
Okay,
also visual.
so-
The way he shows up and they're looking at, Billy Eichner's looking over his shoulder at him. It's a visual setup.
Well,
too.
the visual thing is actually the least pleasant thing of that, because actually you're just making ugly jokes there, right?
Well, that's not the visual aspect I'm talking about. I'm talking about the way.
I thought that's what was funny. Well, yes, the teeth and so on. You put an ugly geeky guy in the middle of like these three kind of really fit people, and that's a joke, right? And then the guy trying to get into it. It's situation comedy humor. So okay, if by verbal you're meaning you're
words.
just saying words, then let's expand it. There are obviously kind of situations that are made funny, but there's not a single.
Yes, there is.
What?
Well, for instance, when they're in the restaurant with Aaron's family, you laughed every time it cut abruptly to the singer coming in, and that's an editing. That's editing that made that funny.
It's also the singing. And
It is also
song.
the singing, and it's also the situation, but editing has played a part.
That's, my God, if you want to make those exceptions, that is like the most fundamental elements in the film.
I'm just saying the film is doing a bit of that.
Well, it's doing such a little bit of that is kind of, to me, not worth even commenting. So, let me temper. Yeah, it doesn't know how to make jokes out of elements that are filmic, really. So the audiovisual humor in it, the visual humor in it, is minimal and kind of basic and banal.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so we can agree on that.
I had a problem with the editing in that it was actually kind of shoddy. It's kind of too quick at points. So it feels like they've been cutting down scenes with like a hacksaw just to like make them fit into time almost. It really struck me when they go and meet the guy they're hoping they'll get money out of to pay for the museum. There's one cut in particular that struck me, although there are a lot along these lines. It's a cut that, because they've just done it for speed and for time, has created a continuity error where he stood up, Aaron and Bobby, Billy Eichner's character, has sat down, and they're looking up at him, and they ask him a question. They say, "What do you want in the museum?" they say. And then you cut to, he's already sat down and he's halfway through explaining what he would like to see. And it's because they've cut out the bit where he would say, "Here's what I want to see." And then he sits down. Like, it creates this eyeline mismatch. There are things like that happen a lot where it's just been, they've been selecting, the best take from, 20 odd maybe. And so things aren't matched here, there and everywhere. Or they've been cutting out frames that would make things make more sense. I found it really shoddy, the editing.
I think everything about the film is shoddy.
The romance, as you say, doesn't work. And I think part of the reason for that, it's funny how the film takes the piss out of Hallmark, and yet it hits every cliche it can.
And also, the worst thing is that Hallmark works.
Yeah, that's right. Hallmark does it better.
Yeah.
So what I was going to say, like, Hallmark would actually build up to the romantic moment. It wouldn't just jump into the cliche. It would build up the cliche in the cliched way.
Yeah.
This just jumps into the highlight.
Hallmark films kind of work because the phoniness is obvious, and the manufactured situation is obvious. But there is something about the longing, right? That is true, and that is shared, right? And that audiences buy into. I think, this film handled a romantic moment. Well, it's meant to be a romantic comedy, right? So the romance is crucial, right? And, the whole thing about, what attracts them to each other, I think is not very well dramatized, right? I think, the moments of breakup are not well dramatized. The moments of failed reunification where you have the Brooklyn Bridge and so on. I mean, it could be visualized into such a wonderful moment, right? And it's a nothing. It's almost like a TV sitcom kind of, moment, really. It does nothing, right? And the sexual bits, which are played for comedy, and that's fine. I laughed, right? But there should be moments there which are genuinely sexy or affectionate or or comedy, and they're not there. So
the film doesn't know how to develop those. It doesn't even seem. Maybe it seems interested, but it's definitely not competent. What I did like, and I thought this was actually really great, are the sex scenes. I think you just don't see these, especially in a film like this, that's meant to be, even though it may have flopped and whatnot, that's meant to be for the Judd Apatow audience.
Sure.
Right? And big Hollywood.
I like those as well. I mean, they were funny, but I also would have liked one which wasn't funny. Yeah, which was about them really turning on to each other and so on, and I didn't see that.
I actually thought more of them should have been funny. I mean, I think that there was...
Well, I thought they were all funny.
No,
I mean, all the ones that we saw that actually involved sex really were played for laughs.
I don't think so, actually.
Which one?
Well, I can't think, specifically... Maybe it's the one where they're... when they go up to... Was it Providence Town, the place they go for?
Provincetown, yeah.
Provincetown. There was one, I think, brief one there, where it is just a lovemaking. It's very short. So the one, for instance, where they fight in Central Park and then they go back and they're fighting. That's a comedy sex scene, right?
Yeah.
But this one was actually it was just love, right? But like I say, it was short and maybe you don't notice it so much. But I thought, that's right. It's where Aaron asks Bobby to be the top because he's not normal.
Okay, but to me that's not a sex scene.
Well, it became. But that's what I said. It cuts and it's short, and I thought then it could be a funny scene because you could have the joke about how he's not very good at this or whatever. He doesn't do it, and so on and so forth. It could have become a funny scene. Actually, it's just cut.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like that, but I thought it was all what I remember of it anyway is all close-ups and dialogue. I don't remember a sex scene. I think there was a kiss, but again, it was a close-up thing. I don't, I mean, to me, a sex scene is also something that's meant to turn you on to the situation. I want to see lovemaking.
Well, there wasn't in that scene.
Or the intimations of lovemaking. That to me is a sex scene.
Yeah, no, I get that. There wasn't in that scene, unfortunately.
Yeah, so that's why. Yeah,
there was actually more in the scene where they're fighting because you'd see Aaron on top thrusting into Bobby, and you're like, wow, I didn't expect this in a Judd Apatow. That's what I mean, because you think, I might see something like this between a man and a woman in a comedy like this. Even then, I think it still might not have the kind of tone that it does here.
Yeah.
But I thought that's actually, it's almost...
Well, you see, I have mixed feelings about that, actually, because I think I liked it, it's funny, but I also think it's contrary to a romantic comedy.
Well, yeah,
in a romantic comedy, you want to have the sense of that it's a romance, that they're getting together, that they have things in common, that they're turned on by each other, right? And, this is a bit of, what's that series of films, Goldfinger?
James Bond.
Yeah, but the comedy about...
Austin Powers.
Austin Powers. This is like Austin Powers moments in what's meant to be Harry Met Sally, or, or and I think, I thought they were funny, but actually, I thought they were off. And besides that, if I think about it, it's kind of upsetting to watch that. It's almost like you don't trust the audience, to be involved with two people, kind of being turned on by each other. That you don't trust them to go with you in a gay setting. So you have to turn it all into kind of a series of quite aggressive jokes, actually. So I didn't like that.
Yeah.
And, I think if you look at a lot of Almodovar films, you see different. He brings you into that. Yeah, he kind of, makes the desire palpable. Yeah, in a way that it never is in this film.
No.
So I have mixed feelings because I kind of liked its politics. A lot of the verbal jokes I really responded to, even though they were not the best. Yeah, and yet... there's something kind of, deeply unsatisfying about this film.
It did something that I am surprised it did, which was that it actually made Billy Eichner unlikable to me. As I say, he's someone who I just like. And his series Billy on the Street I really like. And you see, it starts off with him doing this... I mean, it's funny how the podcast just never comes back into the film. He's supposed to be a podcaster that people know. It's does it show up?
Well, he gets a museum job after that, so that's the reason.
But he's still doing his podcast, surely. There's no reason he can't do both.
I suppose, though, that was not my impression. My impression is that he got this big museum job,
Oh, that wasn't my impression. Because he still talks about, on my show and so on. But I don't know.
Yeah. People ask him for his autograph as well.
Yeah. It makes him unlikable in that all those points, and they're particularly early on in the film, where he will go into the long rant about whatever thing it is. It takes over a scene, and the character is unlikable in doing it. Actually, there's one point where he's chatting to Aaron, and ranting at Aaron. There are shots of Aaron, reaction shots of him kind of like raising his eyebrows, going like, "Whoa, this is a bit much." Like you're going on a bit. And you're thinking, well, you're putting that in a film about, you know what I mean? It's like the film pointing out that he is going on, and it's quite annoying.
It's so interesting because if you look at classic romantic comedies like My Best Friend's Wedding, those faults in people, in the person desired or the person one loves with, they're made to seem endearing. So, and you can imagine how you could show someone running off at the mouth, being super intelligent, insulting people without meaning to, how you can make that really endearing.
Yeah.
And you could see how the person loves him for it. Yeah, even though they might be embarrassed in front of their family. But the film doesn't try any of that, right?
Or it could be something that is a character flaw to be overcome, or or reveal something about his neuroses that is to be something like that.
But it has to be rendered attractive, because if you don't render the protagonist of a romantic comedy attractive, you have no movie.
Yeah.
You have to like them both, and you have to want them to come together, right?
Yeah.
So, and the thing about Billy Eichner, this, like, my friends are going to hate me, but I also thought, he was charming, or he was likable, but in a kind of a TV way. That he didn't hold your attention in close-up on a big screen. He's not charming enough, he's not a film star, he's not enough of a good actor, really. So, you want him at a distance. You want to be charmed by him from, far away in a talking head, right? And rely mainly on what he says to be charmed by, rather than looking at his face.
Yeah.
He just doesn't register for the camera, and neither does the other guy, though...
Luke McFarlane.
Yeah, so I think he is very attractive, and he's kind of, he's kind of cute and so on. But really, he also doesn't hold your attention, really. I mean, kind of, if you're thinking of what people like Hugh Grant or Julia Roberts or people like that bring to the genre, right? That is, like, essential. These people have to be, like, appealing, right? And likable, and kind of, you want to be able to root for them to find love, right? And, this is just, like, a smart guy and a cute guy. Like, and they don't offer more than that, I don't think,
The worst part of the film, for me, and I think it's indicative of one of the film's big problems, which is that self-righteous preachiness, is the thing about Aaron's mum being a school teacher at second grade, and Bobby not being able to help himself from saying, you really should teach your kids about gay history, about gay people. Like, it's when you should get them, and when you should be able to teach them that being gay is okay, and gay people are everywhere, and it'll stop them bullying later in life, and so on. And then the end of the film has him showing her the museum, and she's brought the kids, and he says, thank you for bringing them, it means so much to me that you brought them, and so on. And she says, oh god, it's super preachy, and you went, ugh.
Yes.
She says, it's the right thing, something like that. She says, it's their history too, right? And the thing that's so annoying is, it's like, it's not wrong, right? Like, people should learn about this stuff, but the joke that could be made is about the self-righteousness of the position, is about the unreasonableness of listening to someone else who doesn't share your position, or maybe will take a second to come around.
Who doesn't understand your life? For all you know, this second-year teacher, her school board is all full of Trump supporters, and actually just maybe getting them to read, like, a normal book is a huge struggle, right? So at least kind of, present something about that, rather than just making her seem, an inferior, person.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't like that. I thought it was unsympathetic to the real struggles that people have, sometimes to do something good, right? Like, you want coalitions, you want people working together for change. You don't want to, like, turn them off or hold them at arm's distance because they're not as politically righteous as you are.
Yeah. So the film doesn't give that any depth. It doesn't make a joke of it the way I think it could. It could puncture, like I say, the self-importance of the position. Because that's such a refrain kind of about the left, about kind of liberals, is that they're so insistent on tolerance. Like, that's the kind of paradox of it, right? Yeah. It doesn't do that. It just actually ends up backing it all up and says he was completely right to be this way, and she has improved as a person because of it.
I thought that was very unreasonable as well, because, as a gay man, kind of, you're constantly adjusting yourself to people, right? And, of course, you could say, well, why should I? Right? And the answer is because you live in the fucking world. Because if you don't do those kinds of things, you'll be killed on a daily basis, right? It is just part of the thing that you do. So actually, to me, why he couldn't be more charming and sympathetic to his boyfriend's parents, I just don't get. You would automatically try to do that. Yeah.
Or, like I say, it might be one of those character flaws that is adjusted,
Yes.
whatever it might be,
Exactly.
and of course it never is.
Yeah,
It turns out to be completely justified and correct.
So yeah, I hate it. I do hate that kind of smug self-righteousness. I mean, you want art to connect, with you, but also kind of to connect because it's exploratory and it's contradictory, and kind of all of those uncertainties and bringing them to light and being able to connect through them. I think is one of the things that art does. And if you feel you've got all the answers, then actually you've got nothing to offer me, really.
And the other worst part of the film for me was the song, because this is supposed to be the opening of a museum, and all of a sudden he's bringing out a piano and a guitar and a stool to sing a romantic song that he's written to his boyfriend, who no one knows. I'm thinking, this is supposed to be a gallery opening. What are you doing?
Oh, really? That didn't bother me. I mean, it's a romantic comedy. You give them license to do things.
I didn't give them license for that because they didn't even try to explain it. It's funny again to think about the Hallmark thing. It seemed to me at that point that the film had been referencing Hallmark so much and making a joke of the kind of films that they might make in a kind of...
It sees itself as superior to it, and actually the joke is that it's not.
I kind of thought, is it parodying or is it parodying Hallmark here? Is it doing Hallmark? But it is trying to sell it as a serious thing that it's doing. I kind of couldn't work it out.
It's definitely positioning itself as superior to Hallmark. Yeah, Hallmark is the kind of the trashy thing that the characters have a weakness for, or a fondness. Fondness as weakness, actually, I think. Yeah, because the Billy Eichner character says, oh yeah, I like them, or I have room for them, I forget what he says. But I think the irony is that it does it much better. Those Hallmark films are glossier, they're better lit, they have more attractive people, even though they're sometimes quite blank as well. And, they get you to at least feel for those characters, which I wasn't moved.
I think they're kind of more self-knowing, like about what they are. I've never found anything in a Hallmark movie as embarrassing as I found that song scene, because it felt so confusing and so out of place and so unjustified. You know what I mean? It's like kind of trying to jump at this romantic ending that has not justified in any way.
I don't know. What I found embarrassing were all those moments like, what's his name? The Broadway star. When they go to Provincetown and he's the landlord.
Oh, Harvey Firestein.
Yeah, Harvey Firestein, giving you a little lesson on AIDS, and how many people they lost. And, that kind of like history lesson moments throughout the film, because, I mean, and I feel really like, again, maybe I'm a self-hating gay or whatever, because it's good to see those things. But God, they really feel preachy in this film, and they really drag the thing down. So I think they're really badly handled. So
I don't think you have to feel bad about being a self-hating gay, because as you've said, gay people come in all shapes and sizes, and maybe just hate those ones.
Yes, exactly.
I think it's because there's the same thing for me about being a self-hating Jew. It's like, I don't hate myself for being a Jew, but there are some times when like Jewish people will do something or act in a certain way, and you go, "Oh, stop it! You're embarrassing the rest of us." I think it's like that. It's funny how with Harvey Firestein, his first line of dialogue...
I love him, by the way, and I love his voice and everything. I just hated the way that character was drawn,
it's his first... I know, I wanted more from him. Like, that's it. He comes in, I'm like, ooh!
Yeah,
and then nothing really...
A bit of life, yeah. And all you get is a fucking history lesson.
Yeah. But you notice how his first line of dialogue is saying his name. He says, "I'm Louis," or whatever it is. And it's because they've had Deborah Messing in the film as herself. Yeah. Like, the film has to immediately say, no, he's not playing himself. God. He's playing some guy.
Wasn't that a horrible moment with Deborah Messing, right? I mean, she wasn't... you'd think at least she'll be funny, or... She was terrible.
Yeah.
She was how could you be terrible at playing yourself?
She was terrible in Billy on the Street as well. I think I'm just glad I never watched Will and Grace, to be honest.
I did. And, you know, I don't have all the problems that people have with it. I liked it.
Yeah.
But, Jesus, you know, that was such a terrible moment. I mean, the thing is, it's funny because, you know, obviously I needed to see it. It is, I can't think of another gay romantic comedy that's had a mainstream release, right? It is an important thing. And it's a saddening thing to see that it failed, right? But there were a lot of things that I recognized in it, yeah? It kind of, I didn't think the film was untrue or, you know, I just thought that it wasn't good enough. I mean, you know, I was talking to a friend about Lubitsch, right? Like, you know, he's another Lubitsch fan. And my God, you know, when you think of like what Lubitsch could do with a wipe or, you know, or a cut or, you know, a point of view on a situation, I mean, it's just kind of magical the way that he could get laughs. And here you think, who is that guy who did that video essay about, the British director who did an essay about why comedy is so bad?
Tony Zhou did a comedy.
No, that's not what I'm thinking of. Is, my God, he did that film in Soho, that's set in Soho recently.
Oh, Edgar Wright.
Edgar Wright did
no, Tony Zhou did a Every Frame a Painting video about Edgar Wright compared to American comedy.
Ah, okay, that's maybe it. Yeah. And you know, this is a absolute illustration for me of all of that, right? And you know, I do think instead of berating audiences for being homophobic and not turning up to your film, or for gay audiences for not turning up, you know, in enough numbers, you be a bit modest and take responsibility and think, here I had a once in a lifetime opportunity, to make a contribution, and I fucked it up because, you know, I didn't pay enough attention as to how it should be filmed.
I definitely got that feeling.
So fuck you, Billy Eichner.
I definitely got that feeling, particularly early on when he's going through his various monologues. It did have that feeling of, I'm only going to get this one chance to make this film in Hollywood for a big audience, hopefully. So I will put everything in it, like every kind of complaint or every observation or every minority that I can will go into this. And it felt very stuffed as well. But it actually felt kind of exhausting in that respect.
Well, it's such a motor mouth, and the whole film is like blah 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 him, you know, and then like the burden of feeling, is given to the boyfriend, who wasn't charismatic enough for me, you know. It's like he had all the externals, so he was built and muscly and so on, but actually, you know, and he wasn't bad, but he was just very flat on screen. So, you know, kind of, it's a relatively decent budget film. It's a $20 million film for this, I think.
Yeah.
So, you know, make it better.
Yeah.
It's not good enough.
Not good enough.
All right. So, on that note, it's not good enough. We wanted to like this more than we did. Thank you for listening. We are eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
Apple Podcast, Audible, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter at Eavesdrop Movies, and the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.